Hey guys, it's Ben. Welcome to the channel. Today I'm bringing you guys my in-depth review of the Flash movie. If you guys haven't seen the movie, make sure you guys save this video, like the video, and come back when you have. There are some major spoilers and plot points that I will talk about in this review. Feels like forever that this movie has been out because I have seen the movie now twice. And the first time I saw it was about a month ago. The second time I saw it was on release day. So I've done some videos talking about the good stuff about the Flash, the bad stuff about the Flash, and my initial reactions of the Flash. And my second thought of the Flash, I did say that movie didn't age well, and in terms of what I liked and what I didn't like. There are some really good parts of the movie. There are some really bad parts of the movie. I won't get too much into the CGI, but that is a very big talking point. I did mention that in the advanced screening that will be one of the major talking points moving forward of why the movie didn't do so well. Another aspect of the movie not doing so well was the allegations for Ezra, and I'm not gonna get into that. Third thing just being that the movie, they said that this was going to be a complete reset, reboot. So this is like the second reboot within the last 5 years. That's also has to deal with the lackluster box office. And as I previously mentioned in my Black Adam video about Warner Brothers and the release dates, I think having this June release date and not keeping last year's release date really hurt this movie again. They had a whole bunch of movies coming out last year that should have stacked up nicely, and they put out The Flash and Shazam this year, and they both have just like tanked, at the box office. I'm not gonna say that The Flash was a terrible movie. It's definitely not my favorite movie in the DC universe. It's not my least favorite movie, so it's kind of in the middle. I don't want to use the word mid because then you would have to say that there was a whole bunch of stuff that is better than it, but since the new DCU has started, there's only 2 movies to put in there, which you got Shazam and you got The Flash. So I will say The Flash was a better movie than Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods. Me personally, if I was going to use the last few movies that have come out over the years, I will say that The Flash was a better movie than Shazam 2, The Suicide Squad. I'll put it a little bit over Birds of Prey and Wonder Woman 84. If you guys have followed me, you do know which movies I do like, which I don't like. I did really like Black Adam more than The Flash, so I'll go there too. But if you guys didn't like Black Adam, you're probably gonna love The Flash because it still was an enjoyable ride. There's a lot of things for everyone. The only problem with that is you don't have a set rule or a set tone or a set guideline of who you're trying to please, because you're trying to please everybody. And I think in that aspect, the majority of fans have saw right through that, and the movie hasn't been doing as well as everyone thought it was gonna do. Let's talk about some of the good parts of The Flash. We have the 2 Barrys. They were cool. We have Sasha Calle's Supergirl. She was my favorite character in the movie. Oh, my biggest cameo for me that I loved in the movie was Jeremy Irons, which he was Alfred. And actually seeing Gal come back again as Wonder Woman. I really did enjoy seeing Ben Affleck come back as Bruce Wayne. He is my favorite Bruce, and he's up there with my favorite Batman as well. His Bruce scenes were amazing. He was right in saying that he only had about 3 to 5 minutes of screen time in this movie, and I will say that was true. He didn't have many lines in the movie, but his one line really stuck with me, and I think it was a heartfelt moment for him and his Flash. That was a Flash of the DCEU. He really nailed it in his interviews and talking about how he finally got who Bruce Wayne was and who his Batman was. For me personally, I think that was the best scene in the entire movie, and I gotta give my hats off to Ben Affleck and delivering those lines. The quote reads, "These scars we have make us who we are. We're not meant to go back and fix them. Don't let your tragedy define you." I think that was a real clear hit on like the mental health, issue that we have in America and society, and kind of what the movie's going with too, where Ezra has his own things, his own issues, his own mental issues, and having Ben Affleck deal with his own actual mental health issues and all of that. I think that was a very nice, heartfelt way in saying how, the things that are bad about you sometimes actually make you who you are. You have to find a way to live with it and just kind of move on from that. And I think that was a very good, moment in the movie. And that was honestly my favorite part of the movie. And unfortunately, it didn't get any better in the movie for me as a Snyder fan. But there were very other good parts of the movie. For what I thought was funny on most of the scenes, I think that young Barry played a really cool comedic relief to older Barry. All the night scenes I thought were really good, really well made. But that doesn't take away from all the bad daylight scenes that we got, and that's where the CGI really takes a hit. I love seeing Zod come back, but I was disappointed in how they used him and how they used Fiora. They didn't really give him much to work with. You know, they didn't give him any iconic lines, you know, of Zod where he's talking about, you know, he does what he does, you know, what he has to do for the sake of his people, and now he has no people, you know, like, I know I butchered the quote, but it was such an iconic quote when you had it in Man of Steel, and the only thing he says in this movie is, honestly, is that your world must die, which they didn't really build that up, so I was disappointed with having him in the movie. You know, you can really tell that Michael Shannon didn't enjoy his time as Zod again. You know, he's gone on in interviews talking about how he really enjoyed Man of Steel, and that was like a year's work compared to The Flash, where it was like a 2-week set, and it really shows on the screen. He's just kind of there. And the other problem I had with his dialogue was the part where he was asking, is the world ending terraforming, you know, their Earth, where that was more or less a term that the government used and the scientist Emil Hamilton had used in describing what they were doing. So I don't like that they kind of just made Zod use that term, because that shouldn't have been a Kryptonian term. That was more of a human term. Oh, big problem that I had with the movie was the fact that there was no Supergirl theme. You know, we had that iconic theme for Henry's Superman back in Man of Steel. You know, and honestly, they should have went with it, because if she's technically supposed to take the place of that Superman, you would think she would have her own theme music in the movie, and it was non-existent for me. The other thing, the Flash, you know, he's had 3 themes now in the last few years. You know, he had the one in Zack's Justice League, he had the one in the Justice League, and now he has one here in the Flash. On the soundtrack that they have, his theme sounds really good and I like it, but watching the second time, I still couldn't pick up the theme at all, and I don't know if it's just there was a lot more things going on. But usually in some of the movies that I really enjoy, you know, from Zack and from like Christopher Nolan, the score really brings me in, and there's a lot of Marvel movies that do the same thing, where if their score is really well made and put together, I'm a big fan of the movie, and it just enhances my experience into enjoying the film, rather than not having anything at all, or just having like some kind of explosions and stuff. But I think the score is something that this movie just did not have. The cinematography wasn't anything to really bring home about either. The other stuff that I just didn't like about the movie, and this is where the big spoilers come in, is having Supergirl die, having Michael Keaton die, having that big old dumb creature, that spider creature fighting off Nicolas Cage. You know, you had an Adam West kind of imagery. You had a Christopher Reeves, and also the woman that played Supergirl back then. I don't remember her name, but I remember her being on Smallville. Those cameos, I think, hurt the movie more than they thought was gonna help the movie. You know, with No Way Home, you had the Tobys and Andrews, but those were more within the last maybe 15 to 20 years, I would say. But when you go back to having these cameos for The Flash, for example, Michael Keaton was over 30 years old. And so when his movie came out, I was probably a baby, right? And so I'm in my 30s. I'm 33 right now. So to have him as everyone's Batman, you know, wasn't something that everyone was really on board with from the get-go. And I think Warner Brothers really thought that there was going to be a lot of nostalgic people that would really love that. But I gotta say, man, if you're a fan of that Keaton, and you're from that generation, from when it was released in 89, and then the sequel like in 92, if you like that in your 30s, you gotta be like in your 60s now, right? And so for me, I don't think those are the type of people or the audience that is coming to watch these movies. They're not the ones coming to collect toys anymore. You know, so that's a really head scratcher on Warner Brothers, and I really think they dropped the ball on that, as opposed to bringing in like Henry again as the current, you know, as the would-be current Superman before. But you also didn't really give much of Ben Affleck screen time, which is, you know, the Ben Affleck of that, you know, generation, of our generation. And also, like, you could have brought Christian Bale somehow. You could have even brought Robert Pattinson in. You could have brought Harley Quinn in. You could have even brought Peacemaker in. You could have brought any of the current generation of DC folks from television in, like Green Arrow, or even have Grant Gustin come in as the Flash. You know, that would have been cool to see, as they did with Ezra Miller, you know, cameoing on the Flash TV show. And so I really think the cameos in here just don't hold up well, you know? They had Nicolas Cage as Superman, which was a head scratcher, you know? If you know anything about any of the drama from back then, they wanted to do that, and that never thankfully got made, but now you have this scene to live on forever, and I don't know why. You know, I know a lot of people loved it though because they wanted that kind of Superman, but that wasn't for me, so I didn't enjoy that scene. I didn't enjoy any of that scene where they showed all those cameos and stuff, so don't really want to talk about that as much. I also want to talk about how, like, the major plot points of the movie, you know, of having Supergirl get defeated by Zod. You know, in Man of Steel, on Krypton, Jor-El was killed by Zod, you know, with a spear in hand. But they mentioned in that movie how on Krypton, they're pretty much as strong as humans are, so they're not really these godlike, you know, these godlike aliens that we get when they come down to Earth because of the sun's radiation and stuff like that. We had that explanation in Man of Steel. We don't have that explanation here in The Flash. You know, Supergirl was in solitary confinement over in Russia. Yes, it weakened her. She's been there for, I don't know how long she's been there now, but it doesn't make sense if she's been there for her whole life and for them to throw in her Supergirl suit in there. So that's kind of weird. I don't know what they were thinking on that part. But later on, she comes out and she recharges, you know, her powers and stuff like that. And you're led to believe that maybe she's back to full power because when she first escaped with Barry and Bruce, she kind of healed through the sun and then she, like, you know, knocked out again. But then later on, she actually gets stabbed, you know, with Zod's little spear through her skin. And I don't understand how Supergirl wasn't, like, annihilated him at that point, which she was in some parts, but then, like, she hit him and she falls down because she's still kind of weak, I guess. That's like a whole thing where she goes back and they go back and forth and she gets stabbed like 5 times now. I don't like that explanation. You know, I don't like that she was weak enough to be killed off by that weapon, which, if you remember the Man of Steel, they had to weaken Clark's powers for them to, you know, get a blood sample out of him. But now when they're fighting down on Earth, she's weak that she gets stabbed by his Kryptonian steel weapon or whatever. I think they could have done much better. I think they could have had Supergirl live too. The only thing I can think of is the fact that they're saying that this is a reboot, reset. So you have a new Supergirl only for her not to be Supergirl, and I think that's just a waste of time, waste of space. Waste of money. Speaking of Supergirl, I gotta say, you know, there's been a lot of negative comments regarding Sasha Calle's Supergirl, and honestly, you know, if you're gonna talk anything negative about her, you can throw those comments out, you know, because I think she did a phenomenal job. She is an amazing Supergirl. I really hope they find some way of bringing her back. The other really bad part of the movie, so the advanced screening ended with Barry coming back and him being Flash again and him kind of saving his timeline and stuff. He got a call from Batman saying he was pulling up and whatnot, and they kind of disguised the voice a little bit because it was kind of like I was trying to hear if it was Ben Affleck's Batman or Michael Keaton's Batman or even the Batman that they got originally, which you still can't tell who's on that phone call. And so in the advanced screening, they had the movie kind of just end where Bruce's foot is coming out of the car, and then, you know, Barry just says, "Who the F is this?" And it just ends, right? There was no credits, there was no nothing, there was no scene. And I was disappointed in that because I'm like, come on, are you really gonna end this like Shazam 1 ended with the Superman, you know, cut off of the head? And yeah, and so when I watched the final product, you know, we got none other than George Clooney, which I guess he is the worst Batman in terms of the fans' reaction and stuff like that, but to have him come back and do that little dialogue and then you have the movie end on Barry's tooth falling out, I would have thought that I would have preferred the original ending in the advanced screening as opposed to what the actual ending was in this movie. And there are some rumors about how the original ending was also altered, where it should have had like Michael Keaton and Sasha Calle come back as Supergirl, which honestly would have been pretty cool to see them to kind of just, like, you know, leave off with the movie and it going in some direction. You know, now we're left with, where does this movie go? Where does it tie in? Is George Clooney the real current Batman right now? And so that's something they got to address again. So I don't know. I will say I did enjoy it. I did enjoy the movie. I will say, if you guys really are a fan of the Snyderverse, the Nolan movies, and some of the original DCEU movies like Wonder Woman, you're not gonna fully enjoy this movie. If you guys have been fans of the Keaton Batman movies, which was honestly over about 30 years ago now, you're probably gonna like this one. You're definitely, if you're a fan of probably some of like the cheesier, campy type comic book movies, you're definitely gonna like this one as well. It's got a little bit of everything for everyone. However, it doesn't really dive well into everything and doesn't really gel well. I was also very, very excited to see Gal come back as Wonder Woman. You know, we last saw her in the Shazam movie. She played a cameo in there, which honestly wasn't the greatest. This one was okay. You know, it was very quick to the point. Just want to lament how, for whatever reason, the lasso of truth has now become the lasso of jokes. You know, it's very similar to what they did in the Justice League movie, you know, where Arthur was making jokes with the lasso. Kind of similar in this aspect where Bruce is also making a weird joke. So that was something I did not like. The other thing, which no one is talking about, I haven't seen a lot of people really talk about this, but so the reason Barry goes back in time is because he wants to save his mom, right? He wants to see what a world is like with his mom surviving. And so he goes back in time, saves her, and that's what causes the ripple effect of, you know, the flashpoint. And him saving his mom, he kind of erases all of the Justice League. And so, you know, later on he's trying to find any remnants of the Justice League, and the only person who seems to exist is Batman and now this Supergirl. And so the problem with the mom dying, right? I don't know if you guys know any of the backstory, but for me, I'm using just solely maybe watching the TV Flash, and what I know about some of the animated stuff in the animated movie is the fact of who killed Barry's mom. Now, in the movie, nobody cares of who killed her. Barry doesn't seem to really want to know who killed her because he's all about proving that his dad didn't kill the mom, but never proving of who actually killed the mom. That's a major, like, plot hole in, you know, in trying to figure out who actually killed his mom, which, spoiler alerts, it's the Reverse Flash. I don't know if they were going to go with Reverse Flash, but that's who they should have went with, as opposed to having this Dark Flash and not really making sense and going what they went with that god-awful design for him. Didn't think I was going to admit that the CW Flash has a better Dark Flash version. The CW Flash has done some amazing stuff when it comes to, like, the multiverse and actually tying it all together. But this movie did not tie it all together whatsoever, and they were really hoping on this Michael Keaton saving the day, which he didn't. He also died, and I don't know how he was able to go toe to toe with one of the Kryptonians either. They kind of just made him seem like he's this spry young guy again, but they killed him off. But his death actually was kind of cool because he kind of it was kind of like a similarity to Ben's Bruce, talking about how, you know, you already brought me back, like, it's done, like, this is it, you know, and kind of he just sailed off, you know, he kind of died off or whatever. The other problem now that we have with the movie is the fact that Barry goes back in time to say, hey, I need to let my mom die, right? Instead of him just going back and undoing what he did to save his mom, he ended up freeing his dad from prison, but it still changed some aspect, like we have the George Clooney Batman. It also doesn't solve the fact that who killed his mom, you know. It also doesn't really doesn't make sense of to help his dad get out of jail now as opposed to before, you know. So it's like a whole domino effect of what you can change, cannot change. And as some of these movies have shown, that any little change is a still big change. There's nothing you can fix, and that's the whole point of the story, is like for you not to fix anything, or even if you fix one, you know, minuscule thing, it's still gonna, you know, the catalyst for everything else. And Bruce's Ben actually tells Barry early on in the movie that you have no idea what you're doing and you could collapse everything, which he does, but then he still doesn't make it right because he still changes that one aspect of getting his dad free. And now we're left with, we don't know where this movie goes. The second end credits was also a head scratcher. I know, like, a lot of people do like these comedic tones and just these funny throwaways about some of our heroes, put them in not so funny moments. And so what we got in the end credits was Aquaman, and that was held back from the advanced screening. And we have Barry hanging out with Arthur, and Arthur's just full on drunk, and he's just kind of toppling over, and he just falls in a puddle of water and kind of just ends. You know, it's very similar to the two end credit scenes of Shazam, which I thought were really bad. Both end credit scenes were terrible. The last good end credit scene we got was probably of Henry coming back as Superman, but, you know, just a new Henry, not like the old Henry from Man of Steel where he had his theme and all that. I guess we still haven't really had a really good end credit scene in probably forever now. Drop down some comments, let me know what you did like about the movie, what you didn't like about the movie, were you a fan of the movie, and whatnot. I know with the box office right now, it's not looking well for this Flash to return. I think personally that the way Warner Brothers is handling things, they are just not doing it for the actual general audience and the bigger scale of who enjoys these movies. You know, because I've been looking at a whole bunch of, like, box office charts, a lot of these numbers and stuff, and a lot of people aren't watching movies at all domestically, and most of the big money is being made internationally. You know, you can go off on all the movies that came out this year. I think only Super Mario cracked 500 mil in the US. When you don't make that much money in the US, it's kind of like it's kind of like seeing the end, you know? And I think for these DC movies, I think they should really do a hard reboot, you know, not a soft reboot, not a minuscule reboot, not keeping some of the characters from the Snyderverse, not keeping people from the DCEU, the DCU now. You know, I think they need to really scrap everything, have Blue Beetle and Joker come out, and put everything else on hold for at least 5 to 10 years, you know, because some of the stuff that we're getting is just not high quality stuff. And I really want to enjoy, you know, watching some of these DC movies, and what we got in this movie wasn't the best. It had promise. It wasn't the greatest. It wasn't the worst. It's just kind of just there. But if it's going to be the start of the DCU now, you got the bar set low with Shazam 2. You got a little bit of a bar set for The Flash, but I think there's a lot of room to grow. You know, we'll have some good stuff. Oh, the other thing I want to mention before I let you guys go is the fact that they mentioned how the way time works, or time travel works. You know, it's very similar to what the MCU tried to do with the multiverse, and I think Spider-Verse did it really well, talking about the canon events. But funny enough, when I was watching Across the Spider-Verse, because I watched it after The Flash, I feel like The Flash actually explained it and gave a lot of good examples of what happens and what doesn't happen. And so for me, I will say The Flash and Spider-Man have a lot of things in common. And for me, I saw The Flash first. So for me personally, I think, you know, Spider-Man's canon events gets on the piggyback of, you know, The Flash. But I have seen, after watching The Flash, some people mention it's like, oh, that was just like Spider-Man. So it's kind of weird having the same kind of themes in both franchises with Marvel and DC. But I don't like to compare them too much because I do love Marvel, but I do love DC. And so I'm always going to choose DC usually over Marvel. But, you know, the bar is getting very close in terms of which, you know, franchise I like more. You know, whether it's the MCU or the DCU now. But only time will tell where we go from here. So make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Turn on your notifications, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.